Have you ever made your own world or regional map for a Dungeons & Dragons campaign? If you are anything like me, you've probably reached a point in the past in your world building or map making experience and stopped yourself to ask, hang on, is any of this going to be relevant in the game? I'm not writing a series of novels or creating a world for a video game. This is a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Am I spending too much time on detail that the players will likely never see? In my case, as a serial world builder, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. I know full well that the players will only end up engaging in about 5% of what I create. But I'm okay with that because I really enjoy the process, and I do tend to share my stuff with the wider D&D community via Reddit, Imgur, and here on YouTube. And I've even published a few titles on DM's Guild. So even if my players don't get to see or use everything I make, I know somebody out there probably will. But for most dungeon masters, you're not going to have enough free time to spend 25 hours on a world map, or another 5 hours just on a country map, and then another 10 hours on a city map. Most of the time we need to know where to draw the line, to work out an appropriate level of detail that is going to fit for our game. And that's going to be a little different for all of us. Some DMs get by without a map at all, or even just a simple 10-minute sketch with paper and pencil, and that's absolutely fine. There is no wrong way to do it. So if you want to see someone, me, go way past that line as I build out the regional map for my new upcoming campaign, then keep watching. I'm going to use Wonderdraft to create Iros, the fictional nation, which is going to be the focal point of a new campaign that I'm building, based within the Legacy of the Vale campaign setting for D&D 5th edition. Wow, that was quite a long introduction. Ahoy everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Nazir North, and in this video I'm going to bring you along on my own journey of campaign preparation, specifically map making the country of Iros. Iros is just one part of a larger world that I built out for a campaign setting called the Legacy of the Vale. I've got a whole playlist on the creation process for that world map, which you can check out in the corner if you're interested. Those were my first ever YouTube videos, so the sound and production quality isn't perfect, but if you want to see that full world map built out from scratch, then you might enjoy watching them. This video, however, is a zoom in on one particular country as we really flesh out the local area around where the campaign is going to begin. Wonderdraft allows us to take a cut from an existing map and generate that as a new save file, which is what I've done here for Iros. The general coastline, mountains and rivers are pretty much set as they are, as that's how they feature in the world map, but there are some changes I'd like to make. I noticed as I was checking through this map cut that I've actually used two different types of hill assets here. One in the north called Penned Hills and one in the south called Playful Hills. So I'll be cleaning those up a bit and touching up the vegetation in places here and there. Normally for these type of maps I'd use 100% scale for hills and mountains, and then scale down to around 15 or 20 for the vegetation. However, because of the way we've cut this map, the scaling is all going to be slightly off, so I'll have to use an override on some of the larger assets like the hills, and then set my trees and vegetation to about 80% scale. We're also going to do some recolouring and add some more detailed labelling to settlements and other map features. We'll do some world building as we go to create some new place names, and I'll talk generally about some of my design philosophies for this setting. The main points that make it stand out from your traditional D&D setting is that it is low magic, human only, and has some steampunk elements to it as well. For the map, we are also focusing specifically on the country of Iros, so the neighbouring regions will be greyed out. The only ones you can really see here on this cut are Rygbrogos in the south, which is part of the same landmass as Iros altogether on an island called Savora, and Rygbrogos is actually loosely based on my home country of Wales. And then across the sea we can just about see the edge of the Duchy of Cyanrice, which is on the continental mainland. When we get to adding details to the map, there are also some steam trains in this setting, mainly coming out of the settlement called Eden Shade. So I'll be adding some paths onto the map as well to show where the railway lines are. Iros is very much modelled after England in the 1800s, with Edenshade, the largest city, having the look and feel of early Victorian London. Imagine factories, smokestacks, warehouses and docks, long rows of terraced worker houses, but then by contrast lavish multi-storey townhouses, grand cathedrals, banks, guilds, and exclusive social clubs. Some of the campaign themes will revolve around pollution, industrialization, the rise of capitalism, unionism, and the class struggle. There will still be plenty of monsters to fight as well, though it is still fantasy, so no need to worry about that. In fact, the primary antagonistic forces in this setting are demons, but more of your pseudo-Christian demons rather than your classic Dungeons & Dragons demons. And even though the setting is not high fantasy, there are still some other fantastical elements present. For example, many of the factories in the Edenshade settlement are dedicated to alchemy and artifice, with dangerous magical fumes and runoff polluting the rivers and countryside nearby, creating all sorts of mutated animals. If you've already seen the Legacy of the Vale world map, then you'll notice that I have just one settlement marked for Iros, and in general I'm only marking the most prominent settlements and capital cities on the world map, but we do have a few more location labels here with Iros to work with. But these smaller towns aren't set canonically yet, so we have some freedom to play around with these. The two most important ones marked are Triska and Edenshade. Triska is the historical capital of Iros and was founded when migrants from the continent came to Iros about 1,000 years ago. There were already people living on Iros at this time before their migration, but they weren't united as one people, so the migrants from the continent quickly absorbed them into the newly formed Irosian nation. Triska itself was founded on religious ideals, and is the supposed burial place of Saint Aeolus, the primary deity of the Erosian religion, which is simply called the Faith. The Faith borrows heavily from medieval Catholicism in many of its themes, specifically the brand of Catholicism from around the 11th and 12th century that loved a good old crusade. Triska is a sort of cathedral city, with its city centre being mostly ancient stone buildings dedicated to the saint. And it's also where the Grand Pontiff resides, who is the head of the faith. And it is the second biggest city in Iros, but it used to be the biggest. That is where Edenshade comes in. This is our Victorian London type industrial town, originally just a modest port town called Pordomus. Pordomus grew rapidly over the last 200 years or so, mainly due to the introduction of steam power, industrialization, and the rise of big business. It overtook Triska in size and is now considered to be the largest city in the world. In the Erosian faith, Eden is the name for their paradise, their heaven, and as Pordomus grew, it became a den of sin, so the priests started calling it Edenshade, as in a place where the residents were in the shadow of paradise. The people there would never get to heaven, or so they believed. And it began as a derisive name, an insult, but the locals adopted it, and it's become over time the unofficial but probably more well-known name for the city. Government offices even moved from Triska to Edenshade, as Edenshade is where all the money is. And speaking of government and politics, even though the faith is very prominent, Iros isn't a theocracy. It's sort of democratic. It has a ministry of officials that vote on matters of state, and the ministers themselves are elected from regional leaders, but these members tend to be those who were originally from rich or powerful families, so it's not really a true democracy. The faith are also invested in politics, with one of the ministry positions being the Minister of Faith, which holds a lot of sway in these votes. There is one other settlement I know I definitely need to place, and that's the village of Balesot. This will be a small village where the party will meet at the start of the campaign, and there will be a beginning adventure there near the village while the party are on their way to Edenshade. So I'm thinking Balesot should be a couple of days walk from Edenshade, probably to the south. And Edenshade is where most of the campaign will take place. There will still be some travel and wilderness exploration and some obligatory dungeons. but the campaign as a whole is fairly urban focused, at least in the first act. I won't give too much away as I know the players will be watching this video too. There is one town in the snowy north called Arboen. This is another one I'd actually like to keep as is. Even though this campaign hasn't started yet, I did use the town of Arboen in a one-shot adventure, so it's sort of pseudo-canon at this point, so I'd like to keep it there. In Iros, the Faith consider all magic that doesn't stem from their religion, so their own cleric and paladin type NPCs, to be heresy, but that doesn't mean magic classes are banned for players. They just need to be careful about where and when they cast their magic. Most combat encounters in this campaign aren't going to take place in the middle of a city street, so it's not something they'll need to worry about most of the time. They'll just need to be careful when casting magic out of combat, particularly if they're in public. For the place names for Iros, I'll be using some traditional English sounding names while also mixing in some Latin and Welsh or Brittonic roots as well. I also found a Wikipedia page on a glossary of landform terms, so that was also really helpful in getting some inspiration for these names. When labelling, it can be quite tempting to just use some kind of online generator to make up some nonsense fantasy sounding names, and I think that's fine if you are in a rush. But usually I like a name to mean something. Either it has a link to the land in some way, maybe the geography or geology, or it links to the resources of the area, whatever the local produce is. Or maybe it links to a location's history, maybe a battle that once took place there, or a place that's named after a prominent historical character. I also like to mix in real-world languages as well. Latin and Greek typically work really well in an English-speaking campaign, because it gives off that fantasy magic feeling. It's why all of the spells in Harry Potter are in Latin. It's just got that strong association with spellcraft in modern fiction. As a Welshman, I also like to use Welsh in my place names too, as well as drawing on some Viking and Scandinavian roots as well. Just like how many place names in the UK are a mashup of different peoples and different languages that have settled in Britain over the millennia. One thing I don't plan on doing in this setting is inventing my own language. Not only is it a lot of work, I definitely don't have the skills or patience to do it. And fundamentally, you don't need to. DMs should definitely not feel pressured to invent languages for their games. In science fiction shows, there's always that fair criticism asking, well, why are all the aliens speaking English? And I think that's a fair question in science fiction, but things are a little different in fantasy. In The Lord of the Rings, for example, none of the protagonists are speaking English. They're speaking Westron, or common speech as Tolkien called it. The suspension of disbelief here that the audience have to buy into is that those fantastical languages have been translated from Westron into English so that we can read and understand it. The same is true for common as a language in Dungeons & Dragons. It's not English. So following that thread, if you want your elves to speak Latin, you can use Latin words but just say they're speaking Elvish. It sounds like Latin to you because Latin is an ancestor to your native tongue of English, and Elvish is an ancestor tongue to Common in the campaign setting. Ultimately, you choose the words and languages that evoke the feeling you want to try and evoke in your audience, i.e. in your players. If you want something to feel old and authoritative, maybe use Latin. If you want it to feel ancient and mysterious, maybe use Greek. If you wanted to feel whimsical and fey-like, maybe use Welsh or Gaelic or another Celtic language. It's going to be different depending on where you and your players are from. If your first language is a modern Latin family language, like Italian or Spanish for example, then maybe Latin wouldn't quite give your players the same feel as it might do for me. It's going to be different for everyone. And of course you always have to be careful when it comes to potential harmful stereotypes with languages, but that's where you've got to use your individual discretion. I can't tell you what is or isn't going to work at your table. Alright, so we are nearly finished, just some final touches to clean things up. This map is quite busy when it comes to labels compared to some of my other maps, but I don't mind it because of the function of this map, which is to be used directly by the players. Once we're finished, I'm going to go to a print shop and get this printed and cut nice and big so the players can actually use it at the table. It doesn't really matter too much that some of the labels are difficult to read when fully zoomed out, because the players are going to be able to pick this up with their hands and look at it when they need to. That is the difference between a map that you might want for display versus a map that the players are actually going to use. And that is why I've added names for things like the geographical features and even the river names as well. It gives me something to refer to when I'm talking as NPCs, and it lets the players then look up those places to work out where they are. Wonderdraft is pretty good with label settings too, as you can save and reuse your presets. So I can set a style for towns, for example, and reuse that when I need it. It doesn't transfer across save files though, unfortunately. That's the only limitation of it. I think we are there, a map which is ready to share with the players. A map which they can have as a printout and draw and scribble all over it as the campaign plays out. So, going back to my original question, is this too much detail? For me, personally, this is perfect. It satiates my creativity as an outlet, and it gives me loads of space to play with as the game develops, to change and insert new things where I need to. Right now, Edenshade and Triska are the only settlements that I've got any world building information on, and I won't really need to build out any more settlements to that level of detail until the group travel there. So that gives me some flexibility. I can just focus on detail for the settlements that I know are going to be relevant and then work on the others as they come up. And I think that is the best way to manage your prep time. The closer an event or a location is, the more detail you need. The further away in the future it is, or maybe the further away geographically it is, the less certain you can be about how events will unfold relating to it, based on player decisions. So there literally are some things that you are better off making up on the fly. Focus on what's important and build the rest out as you go. As always, I will share a copy of this map via the links in the description, so check that out if you want to get a hold of this to use in your own campaign, or to just take a closer look at it. And if you're interested in learning more about the Legacy of the Veil setting, let me know in the comments. I have a setting document which is around about 50,000 words. Don't worry, I'm not asking the players to read that would be insane. It's mainly for my own reference, but eventually I would like to upload this to the DM's Guild to share with the community, so keep an eye out for that. That is all for this one. If you've enjoyed, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this on world building and D&D in the future. If you're looking for something to watch next, I'll leave some suggestions on the end screen. I've got some videos on monster breakdowns and homebrew if you'd like to check out that, or some more map creation videos like this one. Cheers everyone, thank you for watching, I will see you next time.